Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen and enjoy my stories every day. The sun dipped below the horizon as I stood by the window of our home library, a sanctuary lined with volumes collected over generations. The muffled sound of the front door announced the arrival of our neighbor, Tom, who, as had become his routine, stepped into the twilight-filled room with a nod and a slight smile. "Evening, James. Mind if I browse a bit?" Tom's voice carried a casual ease, the comfort of a man who'd crossed the threshold from neighbor to family friend. "Not at all," I replied, my gaze returning to the window. The trees swayed gently in the evening breeze, their leaves whispering secrets I wished I could decipher. The library was our pride, a collection so vast that even the walls seemed to whisper of distant times and places. My wife, Clara, often joked that the books held more stories than we could ever read in one lifetime. How right she was, but not all tales were confined to printed words. As the clock chimed softly in the background, I watched Tom make his way to the same shelf he'd been frequenting for weeks. There was a certain precision in his movements as he retrieved a thick, leather-bound volume, a collection of Shakespeare's works, worn by time and touch. Curiosity piqued, I approached quietly, pretending to rearrange a nearby stack of books while observing him. Tom flipped through the pages with a peculiar intensity, his fingers occasionally pausing to trace certain words. It was odd, his fascination with this particular book, given the breadth of options at his disposal. Later that evening, after Tom had left and the house had settled into its nightly silence, I found myself drawn back to the library. The book lay exactly where Tom had left it, its pages agape as if beckoning for attention. I picked it up, the leather cool and smooth under my fingers. Flipping through, I noticed the anomalies, symbols scrawled in the margins, letters boldly circled, others crossed out. It was a code of sorts, a secret language devised to conceal rather than reveal. My heart raced as I began to understand, the random pattern wasn't random at all. The reality of the situation dawned on me fully when I returned to the library later that evening, only to find Clara seated in her favorite armchair, the same book open in her lap, a pencil in hand. Her focus was total, her expression serene yet concentrated as she marked yet another page. "Clara," I said, my voice barely a whisper yet slicing through the silence like a knife. She looked up, startled, her eyes wide with surprise, or was it guilt? The pencil paused mid-air, frozen. "James, I didn't hear you come in," she stammered, quickly closing the book and placing it on the table beside her. I couldn't speak. The betrayal lay bare before me, hidden in the pages of a book we both loved. The realization was a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. In the days that followed, my mind raced with thoughts of retribution. The pain of betrayal morphed into a cold resolve. I would reclaim my dignity, and for that, Clara's deception could not go unanswered. I plotted meticulously, ensuring that the fallout would be irrevocable. The divorce papers were a surprise she didn't see coming, much like the signs in the book she thought I'd never read. As I watched her life unravel, a part of me felt vindicated, another broken. Our last encounter was brief, the finality of our shared life reduced to a handful of signed documents and a cold farewell. As she walked away, a part of me regretted the revenge. But it was too late, the deed was done, and Clara was out of my life forever. The library now feels different, each book a reminder of what was lost. Yet, I remain, surrounded by stories of love, betrayal, and revenge, each book a silent witness to the price of heartbreak. The morning light filtered through the curtains of the once shared bedroom, casting long shadows on the floor. It had been weeks since Clara's departure, but the silence of the house was something I couldn't get used to. The absence of her presence was palpable, a constant reminder of the chasm between betrayal and solitude. Today was different, though. Today, I had a purpose that reignited a spark of life in my steps. I needed answers, and there was only one other person who held the keys to the secrets Clara and I once buried in our hearts. As I approached Tom's house, the sound of my footsteps on the gravel felt heavy, each step a drumbeat leading to confrontation. I raised my hand to knock, but the door swung open before my knuckles could touch the wood. "James, this is a surprise," Tom said, his voice lacking the usual warmth. His eyes darted nervously, not quite settling on mine. "I bet it is," I replied, pushing past him into the living room. "We need to talk, Tom." He closed the door with a sigh, the sound heavy with resignation. "I suppose we do." I turned to face him, my eyes searching his. "Why, Tom? Why her? Why us?" Tom's gaze finally met mine, a mixture of regret and something else, defiance, perhaps. "It wasn't planned, James. It started with a conversation, a shared interest in literature. It evolved." "Evolved?" I scoffed, the bitterness in my voice sharper than intended. "Into secret messages? Into betrayal?" "We were careful," he started, then paused, realizing the folly of his words. "Careful?" I snapped. "You were careless, Tom. With my trust, with our friendship." He looked away, the shame finally creeping onto his face. "I'm sorry, James. Truly, I am." The apology hung between us, thick and unsatisfactory. Sorry wasn't enough, it would never be enough. "Did you love her?" The question came out harsher than I intended, but it was a poison I needed to draw out. Tom's silence was an answer of its own, but eventually, he nodded. "I thought I did. I thought she felt the same. And now?" I pressed, needing to hear him say it. "Now, it's over. She chose you, James, even if it didn't seem like it." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "She didn't choose me, Tom. She lost me. There's a difference." The air was thick with the weight of unspoken words and broken bonds. I turned to leave, my parting words cold and final. "I hope it was worth it, Tom. For both your sakes." Stepping out into the daylight, the cool breeze did little to calm the storm raging inside me. The encounter had provided no closure, only deeper cuts into already festering wounds. As I walked back home, the path familiar yet foreign, the seeds of a new plan began to form in my mind. Tom had not suffered enough, not like I had. If revenge was a dish best served cold, I was the chef with the iciest heart. The library would no longer be a sanctuary of shared memories but a battleground where the final act of this tragedy would unfold. Tom would come to realize the true cost of his choices, and I, James, would be the executor of his downfall. Echoes of deceit reverberated through the quiet streets, a prelude to the storm that was yet to come. The crisp morning air bites at my skin as I lock the front door behind me. The quiet street is blanketed in the soft light of dawn, and I can't shake the feeling of a chessboard being set, each move more critical than the last. My plan for retribution against Tom needs to be precise, a calculated strike that leaves no room for error or mercy. As I walk towards the town center, my mind rehearses the confrontation ahead. It's not just about exposing Tom's deceit but ensuring he feels the full weight of his betrayal. By the time I'm done, he'll wish he had never crossed my path. I reach the quaint coffee shop where we agreed to meet, a public place, neutral ground. I spot Tom seated at a corner table, a cup of coffee in hand, looking out the window. His posture is tense, the lines of worry etched deeply on his face as he spots me entering. "James," he greets me, his voice cautious. "Thanks for coming." "I'm not here for pleasantries, Tom," I say, cutting straight to the chase as I sit down across from him. "Let's get to the point." Tom nods, swallowing hard. "I know I've wronged you. I can't change what happened, but I want to make amends." Amends. The word hangs in the air like a bad taste. "You think you can make amends?" I ask, my tone laced with scorn. I have to try," he replies, fumbling with his coffee cup. "What do you want from me, James?" I lean forward, my eyes locked on his. "I want you to suffer as I did. To lose something you cherish. Tom pales, his eyes widening in alarm. James, please, let's not. Listen, I interrupt sharply, you will do exactly as I say. Or the whole town will know about your affair with Clara. Imagine the scandal, your reputation through the mud. Tom's face crumbles, the reality of the situation dawning on him. What do you want me to do? He asks, resignation seeping into his voice. I want a confession, I state. In writing. Admitting to everything. And after that, you'll leave town. Start fresh somewhere else where you can't hurt anyone else I care about. Tom hesitates, his hands trembling. If I do this, if I leave, will that be the end of it? It will be, I assure him, though the coldness in my own voice makes me shiver. Do we have an agreement? Tom nods slowly, defeated. Yes, we have an agreement. Satisfied, I stand, leaving him sitting there, a shell of the man he once was. As I walk away, the weight of my actions begins to press down on me. Part of me revels in the victory, the sweet taste of revenge. But another part, a quieter, more introspective side, questions whether any of this will truly mend the broken pieces of my life. As I step outside, the morning sun has risen fully now, casting long shadows down the street. I pause, looking back at the coffee shop. Tom is visible through the window, a solitary figure grappling with his fate. Turning away, I start walking back home, each step echoing the complex dance of justice and vengeance that has consumed my life. The battle may be won, but the war within continues, the lines between right and wrong blurring in the harsh light of day. The last leaves of autumn swirl in the cool breeze as I stand outside my once beloved home, the place where lies and deceit had festered under the guise of love and friendship. The plan I set into motion was nearing its climax, the culmination of weeks of cold, calculated preparations. Today, everything ends, one way or another. Tom's departure from the town had been quiet and undignified, just as I intended. The confession letter was secured in my safe, a damning document that I would use to ensure he never dared return. But it wasn't enough. The betrayal ran too deep, and Clara still remained, unaware of the storm that was about to break. As evening approaches, I see Clara walking up the path, her steps hesitant as if she senses the impending doom. She stops at the door, taking a deep breath before entering. James, she calls out, her voice echoing through the empty hall. Are you home? In the library, I reply, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. She finds me standing by the fireplace, the embers casting a soft glow that belies the coldness in my heart. Her eyes search mine, looking for a sign of the man she once knew. James, we need to talk, she begins, her voice trembling. I know things have been. Save it, I cut her off, my words sharp as blades. I know everything, Clara. About you and Tom. The color drains from her face. James, Don't, I snap, stepping closer. I gave Tom a choice. He took it. He's gone. Left town for good. And now, it's your turn. Clara backs away, fear flashing in her eyes. What are you saying? I pull out the confession letter, waving it in front of her. This is Tom's confession. He admitted everything. And with this, I could ruin you. But I won't. I want you to live with your guilt. James, please, her plea is cut short as I step forward, the letter crumpling in my fist. No more words, I say coldly. You will leave tonight. No goodbyes, no explanations. If you ever come back, I will release this letter to everyone. Your family, your friends, the media. Clara's eyes well up with tears, but there's a defiance there too, a spark of the strong woman I once loved. You think this will make you happy? Ruining our lives? It's not about happiness, I retort. It's about justice. Without another word, Clara turns and walks out, her departure as silent as the betrayal that led us here. I watch her go, the finality of the moment sinking in. There's no satisfaction, no relief, only the hollow victory of a man who's lost everything to revenge. As the night grows darker, I return to the library, the walls lined with books that once brought me solace. Now, they are just reminders of a past I can never return to, filled with stories of people who, like me, were consumed by their own quests for retribution. I toss Tom's confession into the fireplace, watching as the flames consume the paper, the words blackening, curling, and finally disintegrating. With it, I burn away the last ties to a friendship and love that I thought would last a lifetime. The fire crackles and pops, the sound a stark contrast to the silence of the house. As the last piece of the letter turns to ash, I realize the truth: in seeking revenge, I had not freed myself from the betrayal. Instead, I had allowed it to transform me, to make me into something I had never wanted to be. The dawn breaks, casting light on a new day, a day without Clara, without Tom, without the love and friendship I once held dear. I am alone, the master of an empty house and a shattered life, living with the echoes of choices made in the shadow of betrayal.